There are goals that make an entire stadium explode, and there are also goals that disappear just seconds after they appear. The 25th minute. Iran were facing Belgium at the 2026 World Cup. A free kick was executed with incredible intelligence. Mehdi Taremi broke free, turned, shot. The ball nestled in the back of the net. The Iranian players sprinted away to celebrate. Thousands of fans erupted. In that moment, Iran believed they had just created a historic turning point. But then VAR appeared. Everything stopped. The players waited. The spectators waited. The entire world waited. A few minutes later, the final decision was made. No goal, no joy. And immediately, FIFA became the center of fierce controversy. In your opinion, if a goal can make the whole world argue within just a few minutes, is it a special World Cup moment? If yes, comment number 1 below. Because the story behind this disallowed goal is far more surprising than anything you might imagine. When the final whistle sounded, the scoreboard still showed 2 zeros. In terms of the result, this was just a draw. Belgium gained 1 point. Iran also gained 1 point. But when looking at what happened on the pitch, the feeling was completely different. Belgium entered the match with a squad full of world-class players. They had Kevin De Bruyne, one of the finest midfielders of his generation. They had Romelu Lukaku, a striker who had scored hundreds of goals throughout his career. They had a squad valued many times higher than Iran's. And more importantly, they were seen as strong contenders to secure a place in the next round. Yet throughout the full 90 minutes, Iran never looked inferior. They defended with great discipline. They competed fiercely. And at many moments, it was Iran who created the greater sense of danger. What stood out was that after Taremi's goal was disallowed, the Iranian players did not collapse. Many teams would have lost their spirit after a moment like that. But Iran did not. They kept fighting, kept applying pressure, kept making life difficult for Belgium. Even the Belgian players understood that they had just gone through a match far more difficult than expected. But what captured the attention of millions of football fans was not the fact that Belgium dropped points. It was the way Iran played. Because behind this team is a special story that very few people know. A story that is not only connected to football, not only connected to the World Cup, but also connected to war, politics, and challenges that had never appeared before in the history of the tournament. And that is the real reason why the entire world began to pay attention to Iran at this year's World Cup. To understand why Iran's story is drawing the attention of the entire world, we have to go back to the period before the World Cup began. Because Iran did not arrive at this tournament in the way other national teams usually do. Normally, when a team takes part in the World Cup, they choose a location as their base camp where they train, rest, and prepare for their matches. Iran were different. According to multiple reports, this team did not base themselves on American soil like most of the teams taking part in the tournament. Instead, they set up their base in Mexico, not too far from the United States border. That meant one very unusual reality. Whenever match day arrived, the Iranian players had to travel from Mexico to the United States, play the match, then return again. It may sound simple, but try putting yourself in their position. While other national teams only needed to focus on tactics, fitness, and the opponent in front of them, Iran also had to deal with off-field factors that no team would ever want. That pressure became even greater because the political backdrop between Iran and the United States was extremely tense. There was a point when many people doubted whether Iran would even be able to take part in this tournament. But, in the end, they still appeared, still wore their familiar colors, still stepped onto the pitch under the lights of the World Cup. And what was most admirable was that they did not come here just to survive. They came to compete. They came to prove that no matter how difficult the circumstances may be, football can still create something special. Perhaps that is why, after Taremi's goal was disallowed, many neutral fans did not only feel regret for a beautiful move, they felt regret for the entire journey this team had gone through. Because behind that offside line, there was not only a goal, there was the hope of millions of people watching Iran from all around the world. And the difficulties they had to face were actually far greater than that. Having to travel back and forth between Mexico and the United States was only one part of the story. According to multiple sources mentioned during the World Cup, several senior officials from the Iranian Football Federation were not granted permission to enter the United States. That meant the people responsible for managing, operating, and supporting the team could not be directly present with the players at one of the most important tournaments on the planet. Just imagine that. A national team taking part in the World Cup, but missing part of the structure that operates behind the scenes. That is not something any team would ever want. And it did not stop there. Controversies related to ticket distribution for Iranian fans also made the atmosphere around the team even more tense. However, what surprised many people the most appeared right in the stands. Despite facing so many difficulties, SoFi Stadium still had thousands of people with Iranian blood coming to watch the match. Many of them had been living in the United States for years. They did not come because they were given tickets. They did not come because of any promotional campaign. They came simply because of their love for their homeland and their national team. That is why the moment the Iranian national anthem rang out before the match carried so much emotion. Amid the boos coming from a section of the crowd, the Iranian players still stood in a straight line. No reaction. No argument. Just quietly listening. Then stepping into the match like true professionals. Perhaps it was those very moments that made many neutral spectators begin to feel respect for Iran. Because at that point, they were no longer just a football team searching for points. They were becoming a symbol of resilience in adversity. And at the center of that story was a familiar name, Mehdi Taremi, the man who had just gone through the most painful moment of the match, but also the man who was inspiring millions of Iranians around the world. In any national team, there are always players who are seen as symbols. For Iran, that name is Mehdi Taremi. At the age of 33, Taremi is not only an outstanding striker. He is also the representative face of the golden generation of Iranian football over the past many years. From his days playing for Porto to the biggest stages of European football, Taremi has built a reputation as an intelligent and resilient striker, one who always knows how to shine in important moments. So when the ball found his feet in the 25th minute, many people believed this was the defining moment. The moment Iran needed most. The moment when a spiritual leader had to appear. And in reality, he did everything a striker could do. The perfect movement. The intelligent positioning. The cold-blooded finish. Everything was precise. The only regret was that modern football no longer ends when the ball goes into the net. VAR appeared. And that moment was erased. What mattered was that after that decision, Taremi did not lose his spirit. He kept playing, kept moving, kept putting pressure on the Belgian defense. That was what made many fans feel admiration. Because for a player, there is nothing harder than watching his most beautiful moment being taken away in just a few minutes. Before the match, Taremi once said that the Iranian national team did not only represent the people living inside the country, they represented all Iranians around the world. He believed that football could connect people no matter where they were living. Perhaps that is why, after the final whistle, people did not only remember a disallowed goal, they remembered the image of a captain who still stood firm after adversity. But the biggest question still lies ahead. Did FIFA and VAR truly make the right decision? Or will this continue to be one of the biggest controversies of the 2026 World Cup? This was the question that appeared on social media immediately after the match ended. Many fans believed that Iran had been treated unfairly. Some opinions even suggested that FIFA was behind this controversial decision. But when looking closely at the images and expert analysis, the story was not entirely like that. According to the semi-automated offside system used at the World Cup, at the moment the free kick was taken, several Iranian players were standing beyond Belgium's last defensive line. Taremi himself was also judged to be offside by a very small margin. In addition, some experts also argued that the positions of the Iranian players affected the ability of Belgium's wall to defend, making the VAR decision clearer under the current laws. In other words, if judged purely from the perspective of the laws of football, this decision may have been completely correct. But what made the controversy explode lay in another aspect: emotion. Because sometimes in football, a decision that is correct under the rules does not necessarily feel fair, especially when it happens to a team that has had to overcome so many difficulties to be here. Perhaps that is why millions of people felt regret when they saw that goal erased. Not because the law was wrong, but because they felt Iran deserved to have that moment. However, what was astonishing was that even after losing the most valuable goal of the match, Iran's chance at the World Cup had not ended. In fact, their biggest story may still be ahead. After 2 rounds of matches, the situation in the group remains completely open. Iran have not earned a victory, but they have not lost their chance either. That is the most important thing. In the final match of the group stage, Iran will face Egypt in a game seen as a final for both teams. One victory could change everything. One victory could send Iran into the World Cup knockout stage for the first time in history. And if that happens, the story of the goal denied by VAR against Belgium will become only a small chapter in this unforgettable journey. Because what fans will remember more is the way Iran overcame adversity, from the difficulties outside the pitch, from the political pressure, from the controversies surrounding the tournament, to continue standing firm and fighting for the colors of their nation. Sometimes, football is not only about winning or losing, not only about whether a goal is recognized or ruled out, it is also a story of resilience, belief, and the desire to never give up. And right now, Iran are writing that very story in front of the entire world. If you also feel that Iran's journey at this year's World Cup is one of the most special stories of the tournament, comment number 1 below. Whether you agree or disagree with the VAR decision, there is one thing that is very hard to deny. Iran showed the world an admirable fighting spirit at the 2026 World Cup. Amid controversy, pressure, and adversity, they still stood firm, still played, and still kept alive the hope of making history. And sometimes, that is what makes fans remember forever. Do you think FIFA handled this situation correctly or incorrectly? Leave your opinion in the comments section below. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and follow the next exciting football stories from the 2026 World Cup. Thank you for watching, and see you again in the next video.